Hello, my name is Silvester Henderson, and I am the CEO of Professor for Life Incorporated, and I am so glad this afternoon to actually be able to present and interview a wonderful scholar by the name of Dr. Joel Powell. He is a professor at Golden West College. Hello, Dr. Powell.
Silvester, my guy, how are you doing, man? Good to see you. Good to see you.
Doing good, man, and I sure appreciate it. I know we've had some struggles trying to get together, but I appreciate you taking the time to come on the podcast. Can you please?
Man, thank you for making the time. I appreciate it. I feel honored, man. I know my life is not complete until I had a chance to be on your podcast. So now that I'm here, I can die happy, man. I'm good. I'm good.
I appreciate that. Your kindness is always present. Listen, can you please introduce yourself to our digital media academic world? Tell us a little bit about yourself. Tell us where you went to school. Where did you start in college and all those different things, where you ended up?
Absolutely. My name is Joel Powell, as you mentioned. I'm a full-time tenured professor at Golden West College, where I teach a variety of different political science classes for the social science department. I'll talk a little bit about those in just a few minutes. But my academic journey has been hopefully it's been a mundane one, man, for most people. I public school kid, and then my parents moved me out of public school, got me into private school, and that was a great launching point because it was a college preparatory academy. I used that as a way to get into UC Davis. So I did my undergraduate work at UC Davis, majoring in political science with a minor in English. Once I completed that, I actually was accepted into the University of San Francisco School of Law, USF School of Law, and I was starting their night program, and what I found out is that I'm not a great night student at all. I don't do school well at night. So what I ended up doing is I transitioned from there. I transferred there to Kennedy School of Law, and I was able to go into the day program. Finished up. I graduated with my doctorate in jurisprudence, and then went to go work for a criminal law firm, and I did that for about 5 years, which was amazing. It was great work, but I found out, even though I had an interest in criminal law, I found out pretty quickly that criminal law has a toll. It can take kind of an emotional toll on you in some respects, depending upon how you engage with the work and whether or not you find ways to separate from it in some capacity. And so as I transitioned out of that, I started getting into public policy, employment and contract law. I did some work there, worked for a variety of firms out in the Bay Area. And I answered, I've always had a passion to teach, and I've always had an opportunity to kind of be, whether it's a motivational speaker or even just speak on a variety of different topics as it relates to the law. But I answered an ad. It was an ad in a newspaper for an adjunct teaching position at a community college. And I answered that ad. And the rest is history, man. I fell in love with the community college environment, the students there, and the passion that I've always had for teaching was just really reinforced in that space. And it's been a beautiful ride, man, a ride that I'm still on over the past almost 2 decades now.
Wow. So you've been in the community college for close to 20 years.
Yeah.
Wow. Now, can you describe some of your obligations that you have and work as a full tenure professor? For not just Golden West, but I think you also worked at, was it Solano College at one point?
Right. I was the tenured instructor at Solano College as well for a little while too.
Okay.
So across both of those institutions, I've been fortunate to have a variety of different roles. I used to work with the student government at Solano, part of the academic senate there, as well as in addition to the coordinator for the Community College Pathway to Law School initiative, which was one of the highlights of my time there. Since I've transitioned over to Golden West, I've been involved there as well. Now also part of academic senate. I just recently took on a position as the new Emoja coordinator for Golden West College. Also working with the Community College Pathway to Law School initiative, been on a variety of committees from distance education to professional development, as well as curriculum. And it's just been an amazing ride. I had a short stint as an administrator as well for about 4.5, almost 5 years. And during that time, I had a chance to work as a DEI, working with our DEI program, as well as being an equity officer, helping to build one of the first collaborative programs between 3 different institutions for our cybersecurity initiative. So I've just really been blessed, man. I really had so many different opportunities to be a part of a variety of different aspects of the community college environment. And it's been just such a blessing and a wonderful opportunity to have that perspective now as part of the various lenses that I use when I enter into the classroom.
Now, you know what, now that you mentioned people say it sort of kindly when they say you go from instruction to the dark side.
Right. I heard that too. You went to the dark side.
Tell me, can you share some of your high points as an administrator, and what did you learn during those 4 to 5 years in terms of some of the unique perspectives between being a full professor and then working? I believe you worked as a dean, correct?
Absolutely, yeah. That's a really interesting question, man, because in many cases, especially as a dean, you're in the space of kind of middle management, right? So you are in the space where you have faculty and students on one end, and then you have upper management on the other. And in many cases, those interests are not necessarily aligned, and it's your job to find a way to create some alignment between interests that don't always see eye to eye. And it's an interesting, but also in many cases a rewarding position. I'll tell you right now, and I think you already know this too, which is as a dean, you typically only see people when there's a problem, right? People are coming to you when there's a problem. They're not coming to you just because it's fun to see you.
You're the dumb person.
Exactly, right? Exactly. So as a dean, I think one of the things that was probably most rewarding for me was finding ways to build real working relationships and coalescent efforts between myself, faculty, and other units on campus. I think that was probably the most rewarding piece, because in many cases it does require not necessarily a gentle touch, but it requires some level of diplomacy in order to try and figure out how do you get all these various interests to kind of see the benefit of working together towards a common goal. And I think that's where a lot of my training in political science and understanding the dynamics of politics really helps out and really gave me a bit of an advantage. But the perspective, honestly, that I think sometimes is missing, and this is one of the things that I found out in many instances as a faculty member, and I've experienced this myself before I even had a chance to be in administration, is that there will be maybe an initiative or a program or some sort of activity that the administration wants faculty to undertake, and in many cases we don't have any understanding as to why we're doing it in this particular fashion rather than another. And so you'll get some pushback. And as an administrator, you almost get a chance to kind of peek behind that veil. You see how the sausage is made, and you get a better understanding as to why a particular action was made and what the benefit could be to not only the student body, but also the college, faculty, staff, different units on campus. And so now what I've done is I've kind of taken that information, and it's part of my process and part of my perspective and my lens. And so whenever I'm stepping into a situation, even as a faculty member, where I'm having conversations with administrators about what's going to happen, how do we do something, how do we implement a program or a practice that's for the benefit of the students, I now have that in the back of my mind, understanding that there may be aspects of this that they can't share, not at liberty to share right away, but there's usually a particular reason as to why we're trying to do something, and we just have to be a little bit more patient about understanding when that information is going to be revealed. But I also think too, it becomes incumbent upon administration to find ways to be a little bit more transparent with that information so that we all can be on the same level.
Did you find that your work with the Academic Senate helped you regarding understanding all of the challenges that the state laws present? Because regarding faculty versus administration, because so many professionals within the community college system really don't know that faculty works under particular guidelines, and that it is but all of those guidelines are interpreted differently depending upon the district you're in.
Right, right.
And you hear the word 10+1.
Right.
Most professors don't even know what the academic senate really is, and most administrators really sometimes are challenged to understand how the 10+1s are agreed upon by their board of trustees or whatever, and how they're supposed to implement them in their conversations with tenure faculty. And I found that in my close to a year working as a dean, that that helped me a lot, because I was so familiar with the rules and the policies regarding the academic senate and instruction, because those guidelines really become the baseline by which conversation now is held. Right. Talk to me about that a little bit.
I think that's major, man. And honestly, one of the things that in my conversations with faculty members, not all, so I don't want to oversell it, but I know anecdotally for some of the faculty that I've talked to over time, in many cases, faculty get hired. They're excited about working at the institution. They're excited about helping students, but they don't ever read the contract. They don't check in about the legislative activity that's going on, and so their viewpoint is sometimes limited. And so, to your point, right, when you're thinking about the academic senate, or you're thinking about 10+1, or you're thinking about all the various policy and legislative activity, each campus is going to take that information and they're going to interpret it a little bit differently, and they're going to create their own policy, MOUs, and various contract language around it. And so it's really helpful as a faculty member to understand what that is, and then understand how your specific institution and contract language is interpreting that information, and then how it's going to apply to you, right? But I know that that's challenging, because we've got so many other things we're doing as faculty members. It's like, where do I have time to even look through all this information? And I get that, and I recognize that. What I would say is that, especially for faculty members that maybe feel like they don't have the time or the inclination to look into it, at the very least, when that information or when those conversations are coming up in your department meetings, or if they're not coming up in your department meetings, raise the question yourself. Say, hey, what was the conversation in the academic senate? What was going on as it relates to this thing? Maybe I heard something, in the ether about some sort of policy or new piece of legislation. How's that going to impact us? And at the very least, you can try to, hopefully through the communication of information, you can try to become a little bit more familiar with it. But nothing beats just sitting down and reading it yourself, and then hopefully finding ways to become more involved in your academic senate, even if it's through some sort of committee work as well.
Can you tell me, thank you, Dr. Powell, can you tell me what classes do you teach currently at Golden West College? And do you have one class in particular that you like more than the next? And and perhaps kind of talk to the audience, talk to our digital world about how curriculum is established at Golden West College.
So as a political scientist, I get the privilege of teaching a variety of different classes in the discipline. Obviously, you're going to teach I teach a lot of our basic classes, which are our American government, or introduction to the American government. And then what I like to call our boutique classes. And I should say, obviously, for those who are listening who may not know, our standard or basic classes, those are what we could consider to be our GE classes, right? The ones that are going to fulfill general education. But I get a chance to also teach a lot of our boutique classes, and I love that because these are primarily for our majors in political science. And so we're looking at classes that deal with race and politics. I teach a class that deals with obviously political philosophy, the law. I teach international relations. And we're building out some brand new courses as well that are going to be looking at politics in our global economy, and just a variety of different things, man. So it's really, really a pleasure and a privilege to work with individuals across various disciplines, as well as within my own discipline, to teach and build out some of these classes. And to your point about the curriculum process, I was on the curriculum committee. Which I'm going to be honest. So let me be honest with you, man. I was on the curriculum committee, and even though I understand the process. It's not my favorite thing in the world, right? Like, curriculum is not my favorite thing in the world, in terms of just the minutia on some level, in terms of the process of building out curriculum. For those people who do not know, a lot of the curriculum, in fact, most of the curriculum, if not all of the curriculum that is built out, goes through a curriculum process whereby you're not only building that within the structure of your own department, but you're taking it to a committee, and that committee is reviewing the curriculum to make sure it aligns with our state guidelines, to make sure that it's articulating with other coursework that might be at different institutions. And then it has to go through a very technical process where we're getting down to the nitty gritty of even, do you have too many commas here? Is this a sentence splice? Like all the various things, which can sometimes drive you insane, right?
Absolutely.
But all of that to say, which is, that process is still really, really important, because the curriculum that we're delivering in classes to students, it has gone through a pretty rigorous process to make sure that we're developing in a way that supports student learning and gives them the best possible educational outcomes that we can hope for. So it's not an easy process, as you know, sir, but it's one that we have, right? It's one that we have, and one that we absolutely need in many cases.
I want to verify that and reconfirm that, because I worked as the co-chair of the curriculum committee for the state, for the academic senate, and at the state chancellor's office.
Mm-hmm.
And, when I got through with that assignment, I was truly happy.
Yeah. You're happy when you're not doing it anymore.
Oh God, no! The curriculum committee is a beast, because you got all these policies and processes, and I find that at most campuses, teachers are very strong generally in their teaching methodologies and pedagogy. Where they fall short is when you have to do all of this assessment and analysis and go back and update your cores, and because a lot of times people are like, man, I don't want to do all of that. You know what? They just want to be able to teach. Why do I have to change my course outline of record every 5 years? Why do I need to, assess according to a metric that I don't even agree with? And so those are some of the challenges that many professors don't understand. And quite frankly, sometimes even the administration don't understand it. They just know they have to do it. And I find that the curriculum committee is probably one of the most complex jobs at any college. But having said that, can you tell us all the different academic rankings that you've held in the California Community College system? You had faculty.
Right. So faculty, I've been a dean. I've also been been the coordinator for various programs. So been several different rankings and different designations that I've had. But honestly, at the end of the day, while all of that's important, to me, what's vital is just how am I showing up for the students, right? That to me is the most important thing. I try not to get caught up in titles and rankings and things like that. It's just not my personality. But and I know that those things are important. But how I'm showing up for the students is what matters the most to me on a daily basis.
And having said that, thank you, Dr. Powell. But please describe some of your work just as a scholar. Do you get an opportunity to go out and, or have you had an opportunity to do a lot of research in the realm of law and politics? In the realm of, do you do a lot of public speaking for various organizations, civic organizations, for your universities, other community colleges, and what have you? Yeah,
so I'm very, very fortunate to work at an institution in GWC that is extremely supportive of professional development, as well as a variety of other interests that I have outside of the institution. Just to name a few, I don't want to bore your audience, man, but just to name a few. Currently, right now, I'm the president of the Western Region Council on Black American Affairs. It's the Western branch of the National Council on Black American Affairs, which is extremely important in terms of the work that we're doing to help support faculty, administration, and staff of color across the entirety of the community college realm, not just here in California, but across the entire country. And it's put me in a variety of it's given me a variety of opportunities and put me in a lot of spaces to chat with individuals. I just actually got back not too long ago working with some dynamic faculty in Arizona, as well as went to the AACC conference in Kentucky, which was amazing. I don't know if you went to that one, Silvester, if you're going to the one coming up next year, but it's been really, really awesome to work in that space. Also, I do get a chance to be a guest speaker and a motivational speaker and a guest lecturer in many cases. Alpha Gamma Sigma, the Honor Society, they have me speak at an event. I've been able to make presentations to the California Department of Finance in many cases, especially for the Community College Pathway to Law School program. I've been called on to do keynote speeches for the Sacramento Black Chamber of Commerce, as well as for Solano College, as well as Golden West College, doing a variety of different talks on various aspects related to voting, voter fraud in many cases, legal aspects of the ideas of diversity, equity, and inclusion, along with, of course, like I mentioned before, being an equity officer and doing a variety of trainings across the state. In that space as well. I also have a chance to work with a dynamic group of individuals, part of an organization called Business Research and Institutional Management, and we've been fortunate to be involved in developing white papers, as well as doing a number of different research and presentation studies on institution-wide structures, especially as it relates to what we call JEDI, which is justice, equity, diversity, and inclusion. We're trying to turn everybody into a JEDI master, hopefully, that is ready to engage with students and ready to engage with colleagues in a way that promotes this level of justice, equity, diversity, and inclusion, man. So it's been wild. Like I said, I don't want to bore anyone, but it's been wild, but it's been a wild ride. That's been a great ride to be able to be involved in so many different aspects of a professional sphere outside of the institution, but able to bring that information back to my institution and share with my colleagues, and again, just kind of grow from that as well.
Well, Dr. Joel, I want to assure you that I call myself an old man. I'll be 60 this year, but I want to assure you that hearing the accomplishments of such a fine academic as yourself is never a bore.
I appreciate that, man. Thank you.
Pleasure. Having said that, who really influenced you to even consider the institution to become a professor, and who influenced you to consider your unique travel to the dark side and back to faculty?
So, I got to go back and give. I mean, there's been a lot of different influencers, I think, along my path. Like I said, I've always had a passion for teaching and a passion for educating individuals. But I think it was really aroused when I was a third-year student at UC Davis. There was an amazing instructor that I had for a political philosophy class. His name is Nicholas Dungy, Professor Nicholas Dungy, and I got to give him a shout out. He was just such a dynamic instructor. He's still teaching right now. He's teaching actually at California State University, Northridge. And just the way he engaged with students, the way he communicated the information, how he was able to deliver just an exciting educational experience. I looked at that and that inspired me so much. And I was like, wow, I really, really want to do I want to do that, and I want to do it in a way whereby it's going to, where students are going to walk away and say, not only did I learn something, but it was the way in which it was delivered that allowed me to retain that information, also inspire them and mobilize them to do something positive in their own spaces. Both he and I also got to give a big shout out to Professor Dr. Christine Acom. She is, as far as I still know, African American Studies instructor. She was the last class I took at UC Davis. Just dynamic and inspiring. And I just took essentially everything that both of them kind of communicated in class and said, if I ever have the privilege and the honor and the opportunity to instruct students, I want to do it in the way in which they did it, which is by giving of themselves and communicating information in such a way that inspires you to want to be better and to impact your community for see positive change. So both of those instructors definitely inspire me. And then when I started my career teaching, I started my career as an adjunct instructor at Solano teaching, and which was phenomenal. It was wonderful. I loved it. In fact, my very first class was teaching in the basement of a library, man. I loved it. It was great. And from there, when I finally got the full-time job, I was just over the moon. I was like, in fact, I'll share a quick story with you. I got the full-time job, my first full-time job, as an instructor at Solano Community College. Terrific institution, love it to this day. Privileged to still, every now and again, they call on me to teach a class there every now and again. So I'm privileged to be there as well. But the same semester that I got the full-time job, I get an email from the president of the college, and he wants to have a chat with me. He says, well, why don't you come to my office? Let's have a chat. So I'm like, great. I go by the office, and he says, where do you see yourself? Now, again, I just got the job. He says, where do you see yourself in 5 years? And so when he asks me this question, I'm a little taken aback, because I'm like, I look at him, I'm like, here, hopefully, like, you're not going to fire me. Like, I just got the job, right? And so he's like, no. He goes, I just want you to think about what your trajectory might look like. He said, have you ever thought about, maybe going into administration or anything like that? I said, no, like, I just want to teach. That's what I want to do. So he said, well, I want you to just think about it. And I do have to give him some credit. He actually gave me the opportunity to attend the Leadership Development Institute. And it's a very, very dynamic it's dynamic, but it's also intensive. And it's an intensive 7-day leadership institute, which really tries to help individuals understand where they can kind of locate themselves in the community college, and how your journey will look, right? As you continue to progress, whether it's in faculty, classified staff, administration, whatever it might look like. So I went to this institute. It was powerful, and I gained so much information, but I was still very much committed to just teaching. I'm like, that's just what I was wanting to teach. So I had a friend who was actually working in administration as an associate vice president, and they were looking for a dean for the business and computer science division. And he reached out to me and he said, you really should apply for this job. And he sold me on the idea that this was an opportunity to help more students. It's like, you're doing a great job helping students as a faculty, but you can help even more students as a dean. So I politely declined the first time, and then he gave me a call back a couple months later to say, hey, we're still looking for somebody, you should apply. So I applied, and I went to the interview, and thankfully I was successful, and I was awarded the job. And I'll say this way. Hopefully, if you ask anyone who was under me for that 4.5, almost 5-year period, they'll tell you that I did a pretty good job. I think I did a pretty good job as a dean. I enjoyed the work, but I won't lie to you, man. I missed the classroom. I did miss being with students and having that interaction with them. And so, again, fortunate enough to find a home at GWC and just be around such an amazing group of faculty, staff, and students. And so I'm just excited for what lies ahead. But that's kind of how I ended up in those different spaces.
Well, what is exciting to me is to hear your continual theme of students first. That's very, very important. Having said that, can you share some of your research or scholarly findings in terms of some of the things that you've done to improve learning for students of color in particular?
So that's one of the things that's that's really on the forefront of some of the work I do with the Western Regional Council on Black American Affairs. This, and it's something that's always coming up, but I don't think it's something we can ignore. If you look at the research and you look at the literature on this, we know right now that, especially after COVID, that African American students there's still a pretty wide achievement gap for African American students, especially as it relates to how they're performing in online spaces. But what we're still seeing a large and a significant number of those students that are participating in online classes, even though we know that the success rate isn't there. So now one of the things that the research that I've been doing and the research that other colleagues have been doing has shown. And what we're trying to essentially accomplish at this point is how do we, because I should probably say this, COVID changed so many different things. We're not going to go backwards, right? We're not going backwards. We're not going to change and go back to the way education used to be. So now the question becomes, well, in this new environment, what can we do that's going to allow students of color to have a greater level of success, even though we know that they've had difficulty in certain spaces. And one of the things that we're working on right now, one of the things at least that I know I'm working on presently, is building out some of these new incubator programs through Umoja, through the California Law Pathway Program that are going to give students of color opportunities to actually improve what's happening in the classroom by looking at how they learn best. And I know this conversation around equity and equality is always something that makes individuals, in some cases, it makes individuals a little bit uneasy. But what I try to do is explain to people is that when you think about the idea of equity, it's not giving people things that in an unfair or an unequal manner. What we're doing with equity is what we're trying to do is give every student what they need to succeed. So, and I always use a bicycle example, right? If you had like an adult male, an adult female, you have a child, and then maybe you have a person who is differently abled, and you said, okay, I'm going to give every single one of you an adult-sized bike. Well, that bike might work for one or two of those individuals, but it wouldn't work for everyone. So instead, we're going to give an adult-sized bike to the adults. We're going to give a child-sized bike to the child, and we're maybe going to give, a differently abled bike to the person who has a different ability. They're all still bikes, but they're the bike the individual needs in order to be successful. And that's all that equity is looking for. So we're trying to develop programs like that. We're trying to develop initiatives like that give the students not an advantage over another student that's unequal, but giving every single student what they need to succeed in these spaces. And a lot of that looks like, in some cases, what that looks like is different tutoring services, or it looks like building out classes and learning communities that allow us to explore more African American, Hispanic American, or Asian American literature. It allows us to look into a variety of maybe math and science problems that are culturally relevant for the students, right? So it's trying to take the educational environment and then tie it into what's culturally, racially and ethnically relevant for these students so that they can have the best chance of success. And the hope is that we're going to see, it's a little bit of a lagging indicator because we won't know right away, but we're hoping to see some really just profound closure of those achievement gaps. And that's one of the things that I kind of take pride in, as well, as that looking at my classes and looking at the results that, as of right now, over the past 4 years, I've been able to shrink the equity gaps in my classes. And so we're going to just continue to try to do some of these things to help improve those outcomes.
You know what? I want to just sort of add to what you're saying, but I want to take a different strategy because I noticed that very few academics discuss this. Especially when it comes to online and digital instruction, is the ability to understand how to make the online platform just like the live classroom.
Right.
No one ever talks about that generally. People talk about it gently, but I find that because when I worked as a music professor, because I just recently retired, I spent hours and hours when I had to change from physical instruction face to face, and I had to now learn how to create teaching synchronously, how to create a classroom that felt to the students just like they were sitting in class. I find that one of the challenges is with the online platform is that if the instructor does not engage enough creativity and innovation, then you bore the students. And so in reality, the students that would learn, because we know that many of the community college students are already challenged when they apply and become an enrolled student. So you further give them less motivation when you don't create an innovative structure of which they can learn from. I wanted to just add that point because I used to hit on that all the time in the academic senate. It is the innovation. One of the areas that improve instruction is innovation and creativity. and that and very few people look at. You just put an assignment up under modules. You have to find a way to make it seem like it's live, it's interactive. Right. It may require having diagram. It may require having cartoon figures. It may require, but it's going to require that the instructor do a lot more work in order to reprogram the way in which they instruct. I know for this old man here it did. But having said that, can you, I just wanted to mention that, but can you tell us?
Well, before I just want to touch on that because I think it's a great point, right? I think in many cases instructors think that teaching online is easier because you don't have to be in front of the students, it's much harder. It's much harder, right? To the point you're making in terms of creating that innovative and dynamic environment that feels like a classroom. One of the things that, I'm only mentioning this because I think it's maybe hopefully a relevant example. One of the things that I've done in my classroom is I try to find ways to meet students where they're already at, right? So we know students are already in social media spaces. So I try to create a lot of content that allows students to engage in places where they're already at. And so one of the things I've done is that I created like a web series, like a political science web series. And it's only like 3 or 4 minutes. Each episode is like 3 or 4 minutes, but it finds ways to engage with the students. And the feedback that I've gotten has been overwhelmingly positive. Like, wow, that was really, really great. You helped to explain something in a way that I didn't understand it, or you tied it to something that's, related to pop culture or something here that I saw on Instagram. And so that makes it a little bit easier for the student to understand maybe what could be completely complex and esoteric. You bring it down to a level where it's relatable, without compromising the rigor, without dumbing the information down. You just put it into a platform that they have a better sense of a relationship with. And so I would agree with you 100%, Silvester. I think that in many cases, you got situations here where we could really, really be innovative and find strategies to engage with students, but it's going to require that level of creativity from faculty members to kind of step into those roles.
Well, one of the things that I'm sure would be interesting, and we're not going to even discuss this, you say, should it be Trump versus Biden? I'm sure you would get a lot of dialogue over that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Listen, can you tell us, I'm very cognizant of the time I have, maybe 2 or 3 more questions. Can you tell us what are some of the challenges or a challenge that you faced as a man of color in the California Community College system?
Oh man,
maybe one or two.
One or two, right? One or two. I mean, as progressive as a system is, and as wonderful as many of my colleagues are, there's still some challenges that exist, and I think probably one of those challenges is perception. Right. And what I mean by that is that in many cases, there's the perception that you were only hired because of maybe your skin color, or that you're not as qualified as someone else. And so those things are challenging. I mean, I had an unfortunate situation, I'd say, where I was informed that in a meeting, there was someone in that meeting who had made mention of me, and they refer to me as an affirmative action hire, right? And then there were other instances. I mean, I remember an instance when I actually first started applying for jobs, and before I was hired at Solano, I remember going into an HR department at an institution that shall remain nameless. But I went to an HR department. I went to an HR department, and this is before everything was done online. But I was requesting an application to apply, and and I remember the HR representative behind the desk said, "Well, you need a master's degree to at least work here." Just the assumption that I didn't have the qualifications, and so I said, "Well, I do have, I have more than a master's. I have a doctorate." And so the kind of look on that person's face was very shocked, and so they indicated, it's like, "Well, I don't know if this would be the right fit for you, and maybe you should try working someplace else that's a little bit more attuned to your qualifications and things like that. I even had one of my mentors, unfortunately, one of my mentors actually told me, you'll never be able to work in the community college system, right? And so it's just, it can be a very, very welcoming and a very, very progressive environment, but in many cases, there are still some instances where you encounter individuals, very rarely, but you still encounter some individuals that are looking at and considering you based upon not your qualifications, not your merit, but looking at your skin color, looking at your gender, looking at your national origin, whatever it may be, anything that they can use to belittle or diminish the significance of your accomplishment and what you can bring to the institution. And so when I was a dean, one of the things that I would do, especially during a hiring committee, we have a tendency as faculty to reproduce ourselves. And what I mean by that is we'll see someone on paper and we'll say, oh, that person went to the same school that I went to, and they have the same this that I have. It's like, oh, and it's like, I think they would be great. Or you see them in the interview and you say, yeah, I mesh well with them because it seems like they're like me. And so I would tell faculty very often, I'd say, that's fine, right? And we don't want to discount anyone. We want to make sure that we're treating everyone equally in this interview process. What I will encourage you to do, though, is consider before you start just honing in on a person that's just like you. I'm like, we already have one of you, right? Like, let's consider someone else who's not like you, because that other person who's not like you might be able to bring a different perspective that helps students learn in a way that this one person could help maybe reach a student or several students that you are unable to reach. So instead of always looking to duplicate ourselves, let's look at how diversity might in fact benefit the students before we look at bringing how a homogenous hire just kind of benefits ourselves, right? And so that's a mindset that we have to start working on and hoping that we can get people to change and think about how we build this out, because we have a wonderful system here at the California Community College. I wouldn't trade it for the world. But we definitely want to make sure that we're thinking about things from a different perspective and including a variety of ideas and understandings in our lenses.
To change our culture and our thinking.
Yep, that's right. Absolutely.
Please, Dr. Joe, please discuss some of your goals, your future projects, and some of your future innovations before we get to our final question.
I think right now, my main thing that I'm working on right now is the California Law Pathway at GWC. And if you haven't heard of that, it's just such a dynamic initiative. It gives students a seamless pathway from community college into a top tier law school. And so we have partnerships with law schools that are, we're talking about like USC, UC Berkeley, UCLA, UC Davis, USF. We're talking about some really, really heavy hitter top law schools where, if we're just being honest, ordinarily our students from community college might have been overlooked by these institutions. And so now through this pathway program, we're giving students the ability to actually not only apply, but be competitive in that application process. And it's been, I can tell you, not just from what I hope to see happen, but I'm telling you from experience what has happened. When I was running the program at Solano, in fact, we were the one of the inaugural colleges at Solano. I wrote the grant along with the help of Dr. Shirley Lewis and Dr. Diane White. And we wrote this grant, got the program here at Solano and ran with it. And we pushed several students into the program and got it going. And as of today, in fact, funny thing, I want to say 3 or 4 days ago, I just got a phone call from a former student who went through the program who just finished law school. But we've had 4 or 5 students that I know that, unfortunately, I haven't had a chance to keep up with every single student, but the ones that I do keep up with, at least 4 or 5 of them have called me. They're practicing law right now, whether it's down in Los Angeles or up in Northern California. So that program is dynamic, and all of them have credited, like, I would not have made it this far without this program. So so that's where my focus is at for GWC. We've got a tremendous amount of students from all walks of life who are very, very interested in pursuing a legal career. And I know everybody freaks out like, not more lawyers, but it's not just about making more lawyers. And in many cases, it's about helping them build skill sets where they can use that in a variety of areas. So a lot of the students who have gone through the program haven't always gone to law school or haven't always become lawyers. One of my favorite success stories is Wanda Williams, who actually went through the program, and she's now she's a city council member for the city of Sassoon, but she's running for state assembly. So you'll probably see her name on the ballot. If you live in District 5 in California, she's running for state assembly. And so it's just great. It's great to see how this program can just change people's lives. And so that's where the focus is going to be for me, probably for the next 3 or 4 years, sir, to get that program up and running really, really powerfully. Yeah.
Now, can you share any final thoughts or ideas you would like to communicate before we close out?
Number one, I appreciate the space you've created 100%. I appreciate the space you've created for these kinds of conversations and to communicate this kind of information. So number one, just kudos, hats off to you. And I say this with all sincerity, I was privileged to meet you, sir. We met at a conference and I was privileged to meet you. And I was like, man, I said, this is a dynamic individual. So I am always and forever thankful for your information, for your guidance, and for your intentionality in terms of the way you bring your entire self to the work that you're doing for the benefit of students, for the benefit of faculty, for the benefit of the institution. So I just want to just commend you, take a few moments to commend you for everything you're doing. And I would just say, as maybe just a closing thing, which is we have, as faculty, as administrators, and as staff, we have such an awesome opportunity. I get up every single morning and I'm just excited to do this job, man. I'm excited to do this work. And I'm like, we sometimes take for granted how amazing this work is that we get a chance to do. And so my thing is, just try to bring your full self every single day to the work that we're doing. Students are depending upon us. Administration, other faculty members and colleagues, staff, we're all interconnected and we're all depending upon each other to bring our best selves to the work. And I know sometimes it's stressful. I know sometimes it's demanding, but it is 100% worth it. It's 100% worth it in everything we do. So stay committed, stay locked in. And if there's anything I can ever be of assistance, please feel free to reach out and let me know. I'm always willing to collaborate with faculty and staff and colleagues across all different institutions. So I'm always willing to look for the next collaborative project and partnership.
Well, Dr. Joel Powell, as CEO of Professor for Life Incorporated, and as an academic man who's been around forever, when I retired collectively, instructionally, I taught for over 70 years, the equivalent of almost 71 years of teaching classes in colleges and universities. And I've been in every system in the California higher education structure: California State University, University of California, Berkeley, and the community college. That sort of rounds up the whole system. Very rarely do I meet people who I find are as intentional and who are wise. You're a very wise man. You're a very scholarly man. You're a wonderful person. I was thinking one of the things about law, studying law, I can tell that it really cultivated your brain and it cultivated your intellect, and it gave you the ability to have conversations above level 1. It gave you the ability to really be an intellectual scholar. And you know what, very rarely, and I say this openly, I know, as you know, I am connected with thousands of people all over the country. But so many people in the community colleges, especially many of our faculty and some administrators too, because they haven't had an opportunity to do research or really work in a field that really requires them to read and to think. Their level to share their intellect is very limited. But the basis of true learning is intellectual curiosity, and you inspire me. I want to thank you for taking the time out of your day from your family to allow me to interview you. I deeply care and love and honor you and your family. And all of you have a blessed week. And I hope to share with you and see you perhaps at some conference soon. As a newly retired person, I'm still trying to figure out what I'm going to do. But one thing I'm going to always do is stay in contact with you.
I appreciate you, sir.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.